Today we're diving into one of the most stunningly rapid and deliberate national transformations in human history. From isolation to empire, we're looking at Japan's 50-year metamorphosis. This is a story of absolute survival, radical adaptation, and a complete geopolitical flip.
So here's the central question we're unpacking today. How exactly did an isolated, feudal island become a modern global empire in just 50 years? I mean, to put that sheer speed into perspective, there were people born into a medieval society defined by swords and samurai who, in their own later years, literally watched their nation operate ironclad battleships and modern rail networks. It's a metamorphosis unlike any other, and honestly, a masterclass in how a nation can entirely reinvent itself when its back is against the wall. Part 1. The Closed Country. 250 years of secluded peace. To truly wrap our heads around the sheer speed and scale of this shift, we first have to establish just how deeply entrenched the status quo was during the Edo period. Starting with the Tokugawa Shogunate in 1603, Japan experienced over 2.5 centuries of relative peace and stability. But, this peace came at a very specific price: a strict national isolation policy known as sakoko. From 1639 onwards, Japan essentially locked its doors to the outside world. Foreign influence was heavily restricted, and a vibrant, distinctly Japanese culture flourished internally, completely shielded from the massive global industrial revolutions happening everywhere else.
It's absolutely critical to understand how Japan's government actually functioned during this long period of peace. Now, unlike China or Vietnam, which were governed by highly centralized civil service systems filled with scholar bureaucrats, Japan was completely different. They operated under a shogunate. This was a decentralized, military feudal structure ruled by a hereditary military aristocracy, the samurai. Land tenure, martial values, and incredibly strict class divisions were the absolute law of the land. And as we'll see, this distinct military DNA is going to play a massive, unexpected role in what happens next.
Part 2. The Western Threat. The Existential Catalyst. So, this centuries-long equilibrium, this perfectly balanced closed system, was violently shattered in the mid-19th century. Aggressive Western military and economic expansion was pushing hard into East Asia, and the defining moment hit in 1853. American Commodore Matthew Perry sailed his technologically advanced warships right into Japanese waters, and wow, what a profound shock this was. The sudden arrival of these heavily armed vessels proved in an instant that maintaining isolation was militarily impossible. The shogunate simply couldn't defend the nation against this level of tech, forcing them to sign unequal treaties that severely compromised their sovereignty. It sparked an immediate, massive national crisis. This really reveals the terrifying stakes for Japan at that exact moment. They weren't just reacting to Commodore Perry, they were actively watching their neighbors fall. China, under a weak Qing court with intense conservative resistance, suffered defeat in the Opium Wars, kicking off their century of humiliation. Vietnam, with a fragmented court and obsolete forces, was facing complete French colonial conquest. Japan's leadership looked at this and realized with brutal clarity, we have to modernize immediately or we will become a colony. There was no middle ground.
Part 3. The Meiji Restoration, a radical overhaul.
Recognizing they had to act right away to survive, a unified group of young reformers launched a lightning-fast, top-down political revolution in 1868. We know this today as the Meiji Restoration. And the sheer scale of the change here is just staggering. They didn't just tweak the system, they completely dismantled their 250-year-old feudal society. Overthrowing the old meant abolishing the Tokugawa Shogunate, eliminating the feudal domains, and, astonishingly, stripping the samurai of their exclusive privileges. In its place, they built the new. They restored political authority to Emperor Meiji to serve as a unifying national symbol, created a highly centralized administration, implemented a national education system, and even drafted a German-style constitution. The absolute crucial takeaway here is this national slogan, Fukoku Kyohei, meaning rich country, strong army. It wasn't just some catchy political phrase, it was the driving existential philosophy behind their urgent push. They knew that diplomatic independence required military strength, and military strength required a modernized industrial economy. The two were totally intertwined, and failure on either front meant the end of Japan as an independent nation. Part 4. Rich country, strong army. Engineering a modern military. Let's dive into exactly how they built this strong army. What's really fascinating is how they used their pre-existing martial heritage, that deeply rooted samurai DNA we talked about, to rapidly absorb and deploy Western military technology and strategy. Step 1. They recognized what they didn't know and immediately hired European military experts. Step 2. They implemented a national conscript army, shifting the burden of defense from the elite samurai to the general population. Step 3. They adopted the absolute cutting-edge Prussian and German general staff training regimes. And Step 4. They fully integrated their newly built national railroad networks to ensure rapid mobilization. They systematically re-engineered their entire military apparatus from the ground up.
Breaking down that German general staff training, we see a level of professionalization that was completely unprecedented in Asia at the time. Think about this. Men whose fathers literally wore armor and wielded katanas were now executing complex mobilization exercises and studying Prussian logistics. We're talking about rigorous war games, staff rides, strategic staff officer rotations, and maintaining a massive standing reserve. Because Japan already had a deeply ingrained militaristic Bushido heritage, they were perfectly positioned to realistically assess the Western threat and flawlessly execute these highly disciplined European training methods.
Part 5. A new imperial power. The global shockwave.
The outcome of this calculated 50-year sprint fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape of the entire world. Japan didn't just catch up, they practically leaped onto the global stage. In an incredibly tight time frame, they completely rewrote the narrative. By 1895, they had defeated the massive Qing Empire in the First Sino-Japanese War. Just 10 years later, in 1905, they achieved the unthinkable by defeating the Russian Empire. And by 1910, they had annexed Korea. Japan not only successfully revised those humiliating, unequal treaties from the 1850s, but they turned around and launched their own aggressive imperial expansion.
To truly grasp the global shockwave of this, we have to zero in on this specific event, the Battle of Tsushima in 1905. The Imperial Japanese Navy completely annihilated the Imperial Russian Navy. Think about the psychological impact of this globally. I mean, it was resounding, undeniable proof that Japan's rapid modernization was a total success. A non-Western nation had just categorically defeated a major European imperial power in modern naval warfare. The balance of global power had officially shifted.
Japan's 50-year metamorphosis is a brilliant masterclass in institutional adaptation and survival. They successfully avoided the colonization that swept the rest of Asia, which is incredible. However, we have to ask ourselves what happens when a nation militarizes this rapidly, this successfully, and adopts the imperial playbook of the era. This triumphant pivot, driven by a desperate need for a rich country and strong army, directly set the stage for Japan's aggressive imperialism across East Asia and ultimately the catastrophic global conflicts of World War II. It's a stark lesson in how rapidly a society can reinvent itself, and a powerful warning about the dark side of absolute ambition.